decades, Coke has stayed on top by being cautious and conservative. Lately, though, Pepsi is growing faster than Coke. The Pepsi challenge is clearly hurting.
Ah, the Cola Wars. A truly bizarre game of corporate warfare going on for over a century between two soft drink giants. While the eternal, and at this rate we might very well mean eternal literally, struggle for soft drink dominance continues between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, the Cola Wars, as many people knew them, came to a head right smack dab in the middle of the 80s. But before we get into that, a little history. Both Coca-Cola and Pepsi were formed at the tail end of the 19th century, with Coke dominating for decades into the 20th. This large segment of market domination is widely credited to Robert W. Woodruff, who served as the president of the Coca-Cola Company from 1923 until 1954, although he remained on the board of directors with a substantial share in the company, so he still had considerable influence over the company direction until his death in 1985. Woodruff was well known for being firm and unyielding in keeping Coke the #1 soft drink in the country and eventually the world. In fact, in its early years, Pepsi was offered for sale to Coke 3 different times, which the company turned down each time. In hindsight, this was an error in judgment. Pepsi's first major blow to Coke's empire came during the Great Depression. Before the market crashed, most major soft drink manufacturers were selling 6-ounce bottles of their product for a nickel apiece. During the Depression, a nickel was a lot of money to part with, so Pepsi decided on a gamble and offered their product in a 12-ounce bottle for the same price, giving customers twice the drink for the same cost. This caused Pepsi's sales to skyrocket, although it did have the unintended side effect of making it seem like Pepsi was the poor people's drink. Coke bounced back in World War II when it managed to not only convince the government that it should be exempt from sugar rationing, but also managed to get government backing to open bottling plants all over Europe so American troops could have, quote, a taste of home while abroad, unquote. Couple this with Coke's all-American marketing campaign, which included creating the modern appearance of Santa Claus, and Coke managed to solidify itself as an American institution. Things changed in the early 60s, however, when Pepsi realized the best way to undermine Coke's all-American appeal was to shift their target market from the greatest generation to their kids, the baby boomers.
Come alive, come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation.
Who is the Pepsi generation? Just about everyone with the young view of things. Active, livelier people with a liking for Pepsi-Cola. A light refreshment with the bold, clean taste, generous in flavor and sparkle. Pepsi belongs to your generation. Why else would Pepsi try so hard to be where you are? Everywhere.
Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation.
This marked a decided shift in the marketing of both companies. Coke largely tried to market to everyone, while Pepsi focused on the youth market, something which they continued to do well into the 80s and beyond. Coke did try to beat Pepsi at their own game in 1971 with what became their most famous and successful commercial.
I'd like to buy the world a Coke and keep it company. It's the real thing.
This commercial did so well that Coke's grip on the marketplace seemed rock solid. And then Pepsi came up with one of their most brilliant marketing campaigns ever.
You're about to take the Pepsi challenge. You know, I have 2 bottles of cola back here, and you don't know which is which.
No, I don't.
We have never met before.
That's correct.
Right, okay. Except at my sister's wedding, you know. But beside that, we have never met. Okay, now I'm going to pick this up and tell me which one you chose.
Pepsi!
And this was not just for commercials. Pepsi set up actual scientific taste tests in supermarkets around the country, making sure that every possible variable was accounted for, so that only the tastes of both Pepsi and Coke were what were being judged. Ultimately, Pepsi came out on top in a majority of these tests. Coke even went so far as to recreate the test in its own facilities and found that even a majority of its own employees preferred how Pepsi tasted to Coke. Needless to say, this infuriated the Coca-Cola executives, and with Robert Woodruff now 95 years old and having considerably less sway with the board than he did in his heyday, an extreme decision was made. For the first time in a century, the formula for Coca-Cola was going to be changed.
Is this a private party or can any store crash? So, new Coke is catching on. The taste is better and newer than. You said the P word. So, what I want to know is, if you're drinking Coke, who's drinking Pepsi? If you can't beat it, catch the wave. Coke.
Yes, new Coke. Oh Lord, new Coke. While Coke would never say so out loud, New Coke was reformulated to be more like Pepsi, in the hopes that those who had preferred Pepsi would start buying Coke instead. And this actually worked. Sort of. More people did start buying New Coke in the Northeast and the West. but not in one key area: the South. Did I mention that Coca-Cola was created and still has its headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia? April 23rd, 1985 became a date that went down in marketing infamy when New Coke was launched, and the backlash against it was huge. Coke's customer hotline received triple its usual number of calls, letters arrived by the thousands, and you can bet Pepsi took full advantage of the backlash, even going so far as to declare itself the winner of the Cola Wars.
What's the matter, Wilbur?
They changed my Coke.
Something wrong with it?
I know, but they sure changed it.
Coulda asked.
What coulda? I stuck with them through 3 wars and a couple of dust storms, but this is too much. Guess something big made them change.
Right big.
Right big. Pepsi, the choice of a new generation.
Still coulda asked.
They got these letters saying, I wouldn't be as upset if you'd burned the flag on my lawn. I wouldn't be as upset as if you told me God was dead. I wouldn't be as upset if you changed the American Constitution. I mean, they're changing the flavor of a soft drink. And it dominated the news for 3 months. It was unbelievable. And finally, and they had psychologists listening in on the 800 number line who said that these people sounded as if a family member had died. That was the way they felt.
New Coke lasted as the company's flagship product for a total of 77 days before they reversed course and began producing the original formula once again, this time under the name Coca-Cola Classic, a name which stuck around until 2009. As for New Coke, it stuck around as well, being renamed Coke 2 in 1992 and ultimately discontinued worldwide in 2002. This marked a change in the nature of the Cola Wars. While technically the Cola Wars haven't actually ended, and probably never will while both these companies are in existence, the New Coke debacle was kind of the end of an era and the end of the Cola Wars term itself. Coke and Pepsi still struggle for market share all over the country and the world, but in much subtler ways, usually targeting exclusivity deals with school districts, cities, and other private corporations. For example, Coke has an ongoing deal with the Walt Disney Company to sell only Coke beverages in its theme parks. However, at the time of this video's production, Pepsi has begun to make inroads into getting their beverages there as well, alongside its Frito-Lay snack products. The heyday of the Cola Wars may have passed, but they still continue today, a war for the hearts, minds, and taste buds of the world. Both have their staunch defenders and their vehement detractors, but until one of them goes under, expect the Cola Wars to continue for a very long time. I'm Aaron Mills. Join me again next week for another edition of Saturd80s.
Still coulda asked.